Hi everyone. So I've been using Nothing Phone 2 for a couple of days now. I've already tried Nothing Phone 1 and my experience was not really good. But since then there are a lot of things that have been changed and Nothing team is working on software update and they had actually made Nothing Phone 1 really good. And this time I think they made a good combination of iPhone and Pixel and I'm really excited for it. See, I know in India a lot of people think this is an overpriced phone. But these are those people who are just going to compare specs or maybe the processor on same level. But in my opinion, Nothing is trying to make a good hardware and software combination, which makes it not overpriced at all. So let's start with the highlight of the phone, which is the Glyph Lite. Last year I said I don't care about the Glyph Lite at all, but this time my opinion has been changed slightly. I would never buy a phone for these light. It is an additional feature with some caveat, but once in a while, with the right case, I find it useful. I'm someone who doesn't like always on display. It gives me anxiety, and whenever the display is on, I try to reach to my phone just to check if there is new notification. So I turned it off. But the problem is when you're not in the room, you will never know whether you have an important notification or not. With Nothing Phone 1, there was no feature called essential notification. So even with the Glyph Lite, you won't be able to know whether there is an important notification or not because you were not in the room. And the light is not going to keep blinking because it's going to eat battery life. Now with Nothing Phone 2, essential notification, I can enable Glyph for any app with limited chats or group that will keep this LED awake so that I can see if I have an important notification. So that is the one feature I actually find useful. This year also they have enabled auto mode for Glyph Lite, but I keep it on the lowest setting. Even with that, I feel it's a little bit strong, especially in night. I wish there was a way to dim it down a little bit more, but that's not a big issue. Now let's talk about the design of this phone, which I think is subjective and it's a personal choice. So my brother is looking for a phone in the similar price range and I think this is going to be a good phone for him. So I said after the review I can give this phone to you, and he said he doesn't like how this phone looks. So this is kind of like a love it or hate it for most of the people. For me, I don't mind the design, but it doesn't look as premium as any other normal phone. See, I'm not saying it is not a premium phone. I'm just saying that transparent back has its own flaws and even the glass sometimes looks like a plastic even though it feels like a glass. And there is a tiny particle in the back of my phone, so that is another issue with the transparent phone. So the looks, I leave it up to you. For the in-hand feel, this phone feels like an iPhone 14 Plus, and if you haven't hold it, it's actually premium phone but doesn't feel heavy at all for the size, and the weight distribution is on point. The slight curved glass makes it a bit easy to use this phone, but it's still a large phone. It's quite wide and sometimes uncomfortable to use with one hand, so it is always a two-handed phone. And it gets even wider with the case. Otherwise, the build quality is premium. It has Gorilla Glass 5 on both front and rear. It also has a metal frame on the side, which is rare in this price range. My only problem with this phone is going to be the IP rating. It is only IP54, so it is just splash resistant, not water resistant. And I think in this price range, that would have been really good. The display on the other hand is a good setup, and I'm glad to see that Nothing is using a LTPO panel in this price range. It is one of the reasons the battery life is really good, but I will talk about that later. There are two issues I have with this phone: the lack of HDR certification in Netflix, and no, you're not going to get it with the update. And the second is the brightness of HDR video, which is very low. It makes the display dimmer than normal, and I hope it is a bug and they are going to fix it soon. But otherwise in day-to-day use, it is a good display. The colors are really good and the brightness outdoors is also improved. This could have been a really good device for media consumption, but I think the speakers are the main reason that it lags behind. So it is not the premium experience like Nothing is claiming to be. The speakers are decent, but they lack bass. Also on the high range, the audio separation is not really good. Listen to this. There is one more thing I'm not a fan of, which is the haptic motor on this phone. See, for Nothing Phone 1, it would have been okay in this price, but for this phone, I don't think it's great. So it feels like if you're like pulling a spring somehow and it's like, I don't know, like the feeling is not very good. If you're using it with the case, it doesn't feel as bad, but if you use a phone without a case, it is going to feel a little bit harsh. But otherwise, the call quality is really good. The cell reception is good. I'm using Geo and the 5G speeds are good. I only found a small issue with the proximity sensor, so sometimes it takes a little bit more time to turn on the screen after you remove the phone from your ear. But I think it could be a software bug as well, or maybe the screen protector is causing that. I haven't removed the pre-applied screen protector yet, but that's the only thing I've noticed in the call department. Otherwise, everything is great. And the last small issue is going to be the fingerprint placement. So I started using the face lock more and it works fine. Now let's talk about the biggest upgrade in Nothing Phone 2, and that is going to be the performance. Using Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 was actually a good move because it is a great processor. It has good performance and efficiency, and being the last year's chip, it does help with the cost without losing a lot of performance. The performance of this phone hasn't been less than any flagship phone, and the fact that Nothing OS 2 is so clean, I mean it will give you the Pixel sort of feeling. You will see some sort of stutters here and there which you will not find in Pixel phone. I mean, unless that phone is throttling because of tensor. This has been a really good experience for me. I know this is a little bit underclocked CPU, which really helps with the cooling of the phone. Also, the battery performance of this phone is really good. The software itself plays a huge role, and I can see Nothing team has worked a lot since the Nothing Phone 1, and I have barely seen any bugs on this phone. I'm not going to talk about all the new widgets and customization that Nothing added in the Nothing OS 2.0. You will find that in mostly every video. So I can only say that the experience overall has been really good. Also, we know about the software update policy for Nothing phones. I mean, I have already gotten 2 updates in 1 week, which is more than a Motorola phone will ever get in its whole life. So if they are claiming that they're going to give 3 years of software update with 4 years of security patches, I can believe them. See, I know it's not a perfect phone, and I've already mentioned some flaws about this phone. I can actually add more. So this phone doesn't have a USB 3.1, it just gets USB 2.0, which is going to be a little bit slow when you want to transfer some sort of footage to your system. This phone doesn't have a lot of service center, like this is a new company. So that is going to be a problem for a lot of people, because if you're in a small city, you know how it works for Google Pixel as well. And the third thing which I think is going to be the charger is not included in the box, which is okay for me because I would rather have a phone that has a PD charger or a standard charger rather than a VOOC charger which you have to carry to get that best speed. So I'm using my Motorola 68 watt PD charger which can charge this phone in less than 1 hour, and I'm happy to do that because I have a lot of chargers at home and they all support PD or PPS charging. So I would prefer that over any sort of Oppo or OnePlus phone. This phone also has 15 watt wireless charging, and I know it's not essential for a lot of people. Even this is not the best way to charge a phone, but it's great to have one if you have a wireless charger at your home or even in the car. So it's not going to eat up battery if you're using Android Auto. So I think that's a great addition which you will not find in this price range in most of the smartphones. And if the battery life is good, you can actually forget about all the flaws, which is the case with this phone. I can easily get 9 hours of screen on time if I'm on Wi-Fi. I can easily get 7 to 8 hours with the mix usage. But there is one major part that can actually make or break a phone in this price range, and that is going to be the camera. See, I'm not going to talk about the sensor type, sensor size or aperture because most of the people don't care about it. They just want a point and shoot camera, and I think this phone provides it. You get two 50 megapixel cameras, one main and one ultra wide. Yes, there is no telephoto lens, but the main sensor is actually good in terms of details. So you can use actually 2x images. I wouldn't say this is the best camera in this price range. The Pixel 7a can beat this phone, but I think it can beat any other phone this price range, and that is a really good thing. I like the color processing and even the skin tones on this phone. The edge detection might not be the best, but it can take really good portraits in good light. In challenging light situation, it doesn't perform great. The HDR is also weird and takes time to process pictures. The night shots are good, but just like the iPhone, you cannot select the night mode manually. It is going to decide it for you whether the camera needs it or not. The front camera is decent, but it lacks HDR capabilities. It is good for video calls, but not so great for video recording. And I think the front camera should have gotten a 4K video recording. Let's have a look. So now I'm recording from the front camera. It can only record 1080p up to 60 frames per second. Now I'm recording in 30 frames per second. The HDR is really bad in the front camera. On 4K recording in the back camera it was much better. So the highlights are blown out. So this is the quality, as you can see. Now I'm recording from the rear camera and I'm going to show you the HDR performance of the rear camera. You can also switch to ultra wide in the recording. I'm recording in 4K 30 frames per second and just go back to main camera. So you're listening the audio from the phone itself. This is how it looks. The colors look quite natural. I am walking so you can see the stabilization as well. The HDR is actually much better from the front camera. Overall, it's a good camera setup. Yes, it is not consistent right now, but I think it is going to be better with software update, which has been the case with Nothing Phone 1 as well. So my initial impressions of this phone are positive with some quirks here and there. Nothing team has picked some things people care about in a flagship and tried to give it in a cheaper price. And for the most part, they have succeeded. So don't listen to those people who are going to compare the phone with just specs. That's not how the experience works. So if you like the phone, just get it. You're going to be fine with it. And if you have this phone, please share your experience with me. See, I'm going to sharing my experience every single day on Twitter. So if you want to follow that sort of news, you can just follow me on Twitter. My name is Rohit. I'll see you on the next one. Till then.